On this movie, I'd like to cover the process of sharpening your images. Your images as raw files are generally not going to be very sharp, and you'll notice that that's not having to do anything with the capture, that they should be a little bit soft to begin with. So I'd like to note where that's located. It's going to be in Adobe Camera Raw. Generally, you're going to have the basic panel open. I just want to show you with that little arrow, you can close that up. Let's go to the detail panel, and that will allow us to do some sharpening. I'd also like to note that when it's illuminated, that means that a particular panel is turned on. Moving on, the default for this is generally to 0. You will come up with your own individual procedure to sharpen. And I want to stress that this is really something that's dependent upon the image and upon the person doing the sharpening, or the detail, as it's listed right here. To begin with, I'd like to notice that sharpening is really the amount of, it's the halo of the image. So it's, when you turn this up, you're going to notice I'm turning up the volume. I'm turning up the amount of detail I'm going to get in an image, how that edge is rendered within the pixel. So I'm just turning it up all the way here. So note, I really don't have any other settings in here right now, and I'd like to go into view what's going on. The way I'm going to do that is generally through masking. With this, I want to stress that one of the quick key commands to help you visualize this is going to be the Option key. So that's going to be, I think it might be the Control key on PCs. You may want to look that up or try a few different keys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that down, and I'm going to slide my image. One thing for users of Photoshop, you'll note, as I'm holding down the Option key and sliding this to the right, white is going to reveal the sharpening and black is going to conceal the sharpening. And any of the gray areas are going to be mildly affected. So that's going to allow me to be very aggressive or not so much. So in this area, all the white areas are going to be affected. So now just a subtle area around the different rocks within this cave will be affected. So I'm going to kind of leave it, you know, this is really dependent upon you and the image that you're working on. Next, I'm going to go in, as I release the Option key, it goes back to the color settings. I'm going to go and do radius once again. I'm turning up the intensity as I go to the right. So generally, I like to turn this one down, but once again, this is dependent upon each image and each of you individually as photographers and how much sharpening you perceive to be good within an image. I have a tendency to go really low on this, but once again, I hit the Option key and I'm using the slider and going back and forth. So more intense over on this side, less intense. You're going to notice that fade away is very hard to see. I like a radius really low at around 0.7. Moving on to detail. Detail is exactly as it sounds. It's the detail that's going to be rendered within the image. I'm going to click on that on the slider, hit the Option key, and now we can see what's going to be revealed. We're just going to give that a second to catch up and go all the way over, and it doesn't appear like there's that much, but if you look really closely, you're going to know some information. So I'm going to turn that up. We'll go back to the masking, and I'm just going to play with that a little bit. And this is just dependent upon your experience as a photographer. One thing that I really want to note is when you're doing this, if you're doing it at 22%, that's not going to be acceptable. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes of showing you the entire image. When you're doing this, you want to be doing this at 100 or slightly under 100%, like 66. So let's just look at this. This is with the sharpening on. I'm going to hit the P key, and you're going to notice that fall off and everything gets really soft. And that's something that you're going to notice with all your images, that when they're captured in raw, as a raw format, you're just collecting the data, the information, the image information. And that sharpness, if you may notice that when you're making the image, It's soft. You know, this is really in the post-production when a lot of this occurs. So I'm going to take my finger off the P key. Let's let that render. It's going to take a second here. And it should come back. Oh. I'm going to hit it again. There we go. So now we're back to the sharpening. So that covers that aspect of how to sharpen your image. So once again, and kind of going through this, I do recommend a small radius. Sharpening is really dependent upon you and the image that you're working on. Too much sharpening will be unnatural and look really, really about bad halo around each of the pixels and have an unnatural edge. And then once again, go through detail. Is how much detail do you want in an image? Masking, once again, we're going to hit the option key and you can see, you know, that's really dependent. White's going to reveal in all these images. So sharpening to everything in this particular image. If I bring it to the right and turn it down, or limit the area that's going to be shown, black is going to conceal, white is going to reveal. So it'll just be around those edges. So I want to give it a little bit more than that. This is really dependent upon experience. I would like you guys to try this in many different forms and see what looks best to you and show other people and get their opinion.